We are calling to order at 4:40 p.m. Miss Melanie, can we do a roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Barbara Franco. And I see her raise her hand. She's currently muted. Skip Kaiser. Thank you. Richard Beck.
Here.
Kevin Brooks.
Present.
Jill Barwick. I know Jill was here earlier. Are you muted?
She's raising her hand.
Okay, thank you. Jason Gramlich.
Here.
And that is everyone.
And Scott.
And
We
Scott.
keep
I'm
sorry.
sorry.
Scott. Poor Scott.
I'm sorry, Scott. Scott Warren.
I'm crying over here. I'm here. Thanks.
So we have all our committee attendees. Staff is Mike Pearson.
Present.
Rob Manguela was here. Looks like, oh, no, he's muted.
Present. Sorry.
Thank you. Kelly Jurgensen.
Here.
Myself, Melanie Griffiths. Carlos Villanueva. Villafuerte.
There we go.
I gotta update you in my
That's okay.
notes. Thank you. Jordan Michaels.
Yes, present.
Thank you. And Patty Paulson.
Present.
Thank you. That is everyone on our call.
Excellent. All right. Happy 2022, everybody. Hope everyone had a good holiday season, and congratulations on being present in spite of the chaos out there, including Omicron. All right. With that, we'll move on to item number 3 on the agenda, which is the acceptance of the agenda, which is on the screen before us. Do we have a motion to accept the agenda?
Would you have to ask if there's anybody who wants to say something? The public? Aren't you supposed to do that first, Kevin?
That is item
actually
number
comes later.
5 on the
Oh, it's
agenda.
on 5, yeah, okay.
Don't worry, Richard, I got it.
Very good.
But thank you for the reminder. I need all the
Yes.
help I can get.
Yeah, bet. I'll move to accept.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Barb. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Then we will, the agenda is accepted for today's meeting. Attached is are the minutes. Sorry, we need to back up one slide. There's gremlins in the IT world today, folks.
Sorry, guys, that slide's missing. Let me slide over the meeting minutes instead. Give me one moment. Go ahead. Kevin.
So these meeting minutes these are the meeting minutes from our November 10th meeting.
Yeah.
And they were in the email with the agenda from Friday, I believe, that was issued. And we are pulling them up now. Okay, so don't know if anyone has any comments to the minutes from the meeting last time. We did go out of order, but we did generally cover things, although we ran a little over.
I'm just going to scroll, but let me
Yep,
know if anybody
maybe-
needs to stop on anything.
Maybe go to section 6, because I think that's the meat of the meat and potatoes of the meeting. just from a high level, last time we did we essentially went through the upfront portion of the annual report just for review content and formatting. Okay, any questions or comments on the minutes from last time, folks?
No.
Okay, do we have a motion to accept the minutes from the November 10th meeting?
I so move, making a motion to accept.
Okay, do we have a second?
Yeah, I'll second it, Kevin. I second.
Okay, Barb and Richard are changing places. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right,
Aye, but I was muted.
well, okay. All right, so the minutes are approved. Okay, and then as Richard reminded me, do we have any public members present? Jordan?
It looks like there's no public comment.
Okay, then we will bank the time for item number 5 and move forward to agenda item number 6. So last time in the November meeting, there was discussion on the allocation of the allocation of capital program and project management fees that could span, may span, do span between Measure H specific funds and funds that are not that are not Measure H funds, but that are enabled by or come as a result of Measure H associated expenditures. Fairly loosely said, but with that, item 6A on the agenda is a further discussion of that. So with that, we'll turn it over to Carlos.
Okay. So as I understood the question that was raised at the last meeting, I think it was Mike that raised this question based on some comments. In a scenario where you have a voter approved project that qualifies or will generate some non-bond funds. I think in the specific case that we were talking about, it was state matching dollars, but this rationale or this discussion could apply to any non-bond related funds, whether those are developer fees or the proceeds of the sale of surplus school property or anything else really that could contribute to the total capital program of the district. In that scenario where you have non-bond funds contributing to a listed project, is there a legal requirement to allocate those non-bond funds on some proportionate basis to the entirety of the project? So, you know, just picking numbers out of the air, if you have a project that qualifies for state matching funds, which could account to 30% of the total cost, are you required to apply those non-bond funds proportionally across all phases of the project? So design, construction, program management. That's, as I understood, that was the question that was raised. Is there a legal compulsion in connection with that?
And Carlos, you're speaking specifically to costs that would be common between those funds or the projects empowered by those funds.
Correct, correct. And so I took a look at the project list, you know, it seemed the relevant areas of law. I sort of I think I knew what the answer was when it was raised, but I was leaving that meeting early, so I didn't want to. I wanted to take some time and make sure that I thought about this thoroughly for the benefit of the committee. And I don't, just starting from the very beginning, project management is an acceptable expenditure of bond funds. That's specifically listed in the Measure H project list. It was bolstered by an Attorney General opinion, which I think Skip in one of his comments brought up, which supports the idea that project management fees are a perfectly acceptable expenditure of bond funds. So there's full authority for the district to do that. The question is, do you have to allocate those non-bond funds proportionally to drive down those program management costs that hit the bond dollars? And I don't think there's any legal compulsion in that regard. Once an expenditure qualifies for bond funds, you can fund 100% of that particular component from bond funds. Certainly, the committee has, as we discussed, the right to ask questions about how those funds are allocated and consider whether there are better ways to allocate bond versus non-bond funds. So I would suspect that this might instead take the form of a recommendation if the committee wants to do something like that. There are, as I shared with staff, there may be practical considerations as to why you wouldn't do that, but we're not in a legal arena when we're talking about these things. It's more along the lines of, is there a better way to deploy these funds? Why are we deploying these funds in the manner in which we're doing? And is there some recommendation that the committee might want to consider or submit that, like a lot of your recommendations, can be submitted and considered by staff and by the district and either implemented or not? But the short answer is there's no legal requirement to deploy those non-bond funds in that proportionate manner that I mentioned.
So just so we're all on the same page and we understand. So for the coming fiscal year, so 2021 through 2022, where, and I think this is a fair statement, right? Where there are Measure H funds being expended for capital projects, as well as non-Measure H funds being expended for capital as capital expenditures. There's no legal requirement that would preclude the district from paying for all of the fiscal year's PMCM, program management, construction management, i.e. project management fees out of the Measure H funds, even
Correct.
though part of the management, part of those projects or a portion of those projects are being paid for by non-Measure H funds.
That's correct.
Okay. Sorry, Skip, didn't mean to cut you off.
I disagree. And the question I thought was much more pointed than that. The question to Kelly and Mike was, in these projects with Measure H funds as well as non-Measure H funds, were the management administrative costs allocated over all the funds, or were they just paid for by Measure H? And so the question, I think, comes to the point of, is it in keeping with Proposition 39 and the intent of having voter approved, 55% voter approved, or non-supermajority voter approved bond issues, that the bond issues revenue or the bond issue revenues can be used to pay management of non-bond funded or non-bond monies? In other words, can you, once you pass a 55% bond measure and you have bond funds on hand as well as other funds, can you then say, I'm going to rely solely on Measure H funds to administer and manage all projects regardless of whether they were voter approved funds or, name your poison, matching funds from the state or special program funds or even in-house maintenance funds. And I think the answer to that is no. That was not the intent. I just read the Attorney General's finding again this morning. I'm not an attorney, obviously, but the intent there was of the Attorney General's finding was to open the door for legitimate voter bond approved funds, to open the door to allow a legitimate management and or administrative costs solely attributable to the fact that the school district was using these voter approved funds, that the bond funds could be used to pay that. I didn't state that very elegantly, but I think you get the thrust of it. And of course, the Attorney General said yes, because of, among other things, if they were if the whole project was contracted out. Let me back up. The Attorney General was specifically talking about school district employees. In any event, the Attorney General Lockmer at that time pointed out that if the school district contracted the project to a third party, Van Pelt or whomever, there would be no question about where the administrative and management funds came from, because that would be part and parcel of the contract. And so by extension, then it was reasonable to allow school district employees to be recomped for any time that they spent on bond fund administration or project administration. And of course, Prop 39's the big hullabaloo there was they did not want capital improvement funds or voter approved funding under this special non-supermajority exemption to be used for salaries and employee benefits. But I don't see anywhere where you can extend that, or it logically follows then that you can use bond funds to administer and manage non-bond funded portions of projects, whether they are, whether the funds are commingled, that's not the right term, or not. Having said that, I don't want to get into a big argument here, particularly with an attorney who is versed in the law, and I'm not. But there's something there that strikes me as not in keeping with Prop 39 or the intent of the Attorney General's interpretive finding. And that's all I have to say.
So,
Do you mind if I add something right there really quick and just point something out really quick? Can you hear me?
By all means, I just muted it so the background wasn't interrupted.
Yeah, no, it's really helpful. So like if I were to just use an example, so let's just say we're replacing roofs at a school that, like, obviously that's one of our projects we worked on, and let's just call out a number. It's $10 million, and 8 of it is coming from bond funds, and 2 are coming from other source like matching or something like that. So if you were to apply that, all that is the rule that you're saying, like, all what would end up happening, it would just be there would be no net difference. It would just be an accounting difference. So we'd say, okay, well, like for materials, if the project's 10 million and you're saying we want you to charge proportionate amount to each section for the $8 million that you have for bond funds, the $2 million, let's just say, from matching funds, and you want to do the management fee proportional, that just means, like, in order to get the project done, that what you would end up doing is you would end up charging more materials to the bond, because the money you have, right? So I don't know that it would even make a difference in that scenario. So in the scenario where you're calling out a project that's been approved, it's on the approved project list, and you're multi-funding it, even if you were to do that, the net impact would be zero, because then the project costs what the project costs, and so that would just mean that we would charge more materials to measure H, if that makes sense.
Nobody's arguing the fact that at the bottom line, of some accounting sheet where all these funding sources are tallied up, that it'll make any difference. It doesn't, you're right. But one aspect of accounting, funding accounting, is to be able to identify the source and the expenditures and the cost of the fund. And, not only am I not an attorney, I'm not an accountant, but there's something that seems to me inherently wrong with using one fund approved by the voters to pay for the management of other funds, which, without regard to their source. I think, one of the bases of good accounting is an appropriate allocation of costs, so that when somebody comes back and looks at what's on the books, they get a legitimate sense for what a project would actually cost. And here you're scraping off the management, which, as you can see by one of the charts in our report, I think is running up around 24 point something percent. You're scraping that off and parking it over on Measure H, when I think it ought to be.
I'm sorry, I have to make one correction to what was just said. The chart that you're referring to, that's at 25%. That's all
I don't-
costs other than construction. That's not management. Management is at around 5% or less, if I'm not mistaken. I don't have it up, but I just want to be clear. That's a really big difference.
I didn't mean to. Yeah, I misstated that. So anyway, but my point is that that the management, if the construction, whether it's 2 million out of a 10 million project or whatever, that there ought to be an equitable allocation of the management of what we refer to, at least PG&E, to a G&A cost, general and administrative costs, over the entire project. And I said I wasn't an accountant, but I have had some accounting experience, and I was a capital project manager for PG&E at the Moore Bay Power Plant for several years. So I have some little experience in this, and it would, I would have had my head handed to me on a platter had I started taking funds which legitimately ought to be paid for by, whatever, and moving them over here. Although you could make the same argument, at the end of the day, it doesn't increase or decrease the cost. It just muddies the water when you try and figure out what the heck the thing costs. And it's so anyway, I said I was going to stop there, and I will, but anyway, that's it.
Well,
I also want to just make one more clarification. On the current updated implementation plan, it does show management fees funded out of Fund 40. And I know, Skip, we changed some emails, you and Mike and I, about that as well. So I just want the committee to be aware too, that there is funding from Fund 40 that funds management costs. And when Carlos earlier talked about the logistics behind that, some of that is cash flow and timing. If we were to wait for state funding to fund the early phases of management of a project, we would literally have to stop managing projects and wait for state money to come. And at that point, you would be also losing money in escalation for the project too. So that's just something that came up in our conversations with Carlos. So I just wanted everybody to make sure they understood that there is money in the capital improvement program allocated to management that is not coming out of Fund 21.
So Fund 20, we need an English translation, I think, or a refresher. So Fund 21 is the bond fund, bond Measure H fund.
Correct.
Correct.
And what is Fund 40?
Fund 40 and Fund 35 are the two outside funds that we talk about. So Fund 35 is where we accept money from the state, and Fund 40 is where we spend it out of. So those two funds comprise the state funding money. So the other funding sources that we are talking about right now that are funding projects.
Okay. So Rob, you referenced an example where we have a singular project that is funded cohabitively, if that's even a word, between Fund 21, the Measure H fund, and Fund 40, which is non-Measure H funds. Do we have the case where we have projects that are specifically solely funded by Fund 40, the non-Measure H funds?
I would need to get back to you and go over all the overall plan. I can't recall off the top of my head.
Kelly, do you know?
I think so.
I'm sorry, could you state that one more time? Just make sure I understand it correctly.
Do we have projects that are funded solely from non-Measure H funds?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, we have large scale projects, district-wide projects that are phased. So just like with management fees and everything else, we tend to spend the Fund 21 money first, which is a common practice in bond program management. So I can look at the UIP to be certain and let the committee know. But most of our projects like the campus mods, the fencing projects, the long-term ones, they are phased and you spend the 21 money first and then you spend the 40 money because it comes later. So there are projects that are multi-phased. That may have made things more confusing, so I'm sorry if it did.
Aren't some of those matching funds too? I mean, isn't most of it matching?
Matching funds and state funding are interchangeable terms.
Yeah, that's what I
So
thought.
yeah, when we say the word matching funds or state funds, that's what we're talking about, our projects that we submitted to the state for matching funds. So we say we spent this much, the state reviews that, they agree to reimburse us a certain amount of money. And it's a whole process how they determine what that amount is.
Well, with this interpretation, Carlos, does that mean the Oversight Committee is supposed to look into that money as well? I mean, is that what we're supposed to do, or are we allowed to do, or?
Yeah, certainly. Remember, we talked about this last time. You are given the right to ask and become informed about the degree to which the district is supplementing the bond dollars with state matching funds. So all of this inquiry that we're having is totally fine. I think, as Skip might have mentioned, his argument is, I think it's equitable. Maybe he and I disagree about the characterization, but it's not an unreasonable suggestion. It's just not legally compelled in terms of how you allocate those non-bond dollars.
But we haven't seen any of these numbers for that matching. I mean, the money we're looking at is Measure H money. We're not looking at this other money as well. I mean, is that our responsibility? I mean, should we be getting another set of
I think you're getting lots of information about, the implementation plan includes the non-bond dollars, right? So if there were no bond dollars available, then the implementation plan would be more, it'd be smaller in scope, right? Am I right about that?
Yeah, it'd be smaller in scope, and if there was no Measure H money, then we wouldn't have a CBOC. We may have some management costs associated with implementation plan, but that would be, at the discretion of the district and how they're wanting to fund those costs. I think the point of clarification too, just to make sure we ground everybody, is that we updated the implementation plan 2 years ago. Because we felt at this particular meeting, we were talking about Fund 40, Fund 35, and even Fund 25. We were talking about these funds, and it was confusing to the Bond Oversight Committee. And so we met, staff and I met, and we felt it was best to have these on the plan. You could see how we're stretching the dollars as far as we possibly can, and then it's I don't want to use the word transparent because we are transparent, but it's all out there, so we can see the money that we have available to us. That is something that the school districts and I don't know how other school districts do it, but other school districts have these matching monies. They have Fund 35, they have Fund 40, they have Fund 25 money. I don't know how they have.
We're losing you, Mike.
This district in the past has always, sorry guys.
Andy's gone.
Sorry.
He's doing his best Max Headroom impression.
Okay, well, while we wait, Mike and yours.
So I've got one quick question is, at the end of the day, I mean, we're looking at with the bond money that the bond money should not be used for, administrator teacher salaries. Is that the same criteria for the matching money that it also cannot be used in that way and has to be used just solely for the project?
No, the committee doesn't reach any conclusions about whether those non-bond funds are spent in accordance with whatever authority they're issued. So there may be state law governing how you spend state matching dollars. That's
Mhm.
not the purview of the committee, but you are specifically empowered, and Prop 39 wants you to ask questions about the degree to which the district is supplementing the bond funds with those non-bond dollars. So that's why you want to ask and see an implementation plan of the type that you've gotten that breaks down, this is how much is coming from the bond funds, this is how much we're expecting from state matching dollars. So you don't have to reach any conclusions about whether those non-bond dollars are spent appropriately, but the degree to which they inform your understanding about how much of the district is stretching the bond dollars, that's part of your job.
Yeah, the reason I asked that was, I don't necessarily need to know, but that becomes more important if you're going to separate the funds out from each other. But I think, effectively the fact that we're kind of pooling this money together, I understand why the Bond Oversight Committee would not have any oversight on the matching dollars at all, but would just make sure that with the combined money, if that's the correct term to use, that we're still following the restrictions that we're looking at, that the district cannot use that money for administrative or teacher salaries, et cetera. Otherwise, I don't, I kind of go back and think maybe, it's good to talk about, but I'm not really sure if it matters here.
And just the quick cliff notes, Scott, is each one of the funds that are in the implementation plan do have specific restrictions that have to do with that specific fund. So they're not the same, but some of them do have things like you can't pay salaries out of certain fund or something like that. So they do each have their own set of rules, and that is part of the audit that the district goes through, just so you know.
Good. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm asking, but all right, thanks.
Okay, so maybe I can recap here. And Carlos, I'm gonna direct these statements for validation or invalidation to you on behalf of the committee. We do not have a responsibility to provide oversight. We, the CBOC, do not have the responsibility to provide oversight of non-Measure H funds. In this case, what we're talking about in this case is Fund 40. But that does not preclude the CBOC from staying informed and reviewing the expenditures of those funds or that fund if we deem it appropriate to be informed relative to the economic utilization of Measure H funds.
Correct.
Okay. And you, based on your review of lots of different legalese, do not believe, or have, I should say it differently, have rather concluded that whether there's a single project that is funded partially from Measure H and partially from non-Measure H funds, or whether there is two projects, one funded by Measure H and one funded solely by non-Measure H funds, how the management fees or how the management costs are paid for, i.e. whether they're paid solely out of Measure H funds, there's no legal basis to stipulate that would preclude Measure H paying for all of those management fees in each of those two cases.
A small qualification to that statement. There is no prohibition on expending Measure H funds on program management fees for listed voter-approved projects. But if you had a project that was not funded in any way with Measure H bonds that was outside the scope of the project list that voters approved, there's no authority to expend Measure H bond funds on program management for that kind of a project. But it would have to fall outside the scope of the Measure H project list, which we've discussed in the past is comprehensive and designed to reflect the district-wide capital program that the district has. But if there was a project out there that's not on the voter-approved project list, you cannot use Measure H bond dollars to pay program management fees for that kind of a project.
Okay, so hypothetically, and we're almost done here, folks. If the district received funds for art, and art is not a project on the voter approved list, Measure H funds could not be used to pay for the management of that art project.
Right. I mean, I'm pretty sure an art project would fall within the general educational, you can upgrade educational facilities with Measure H bond dollars. The better example might be something like, oh, what's the hot topic these days? Teacher housing, right? District gets a pot of money like the state wants you to do now, build housing for teachers. District says we want to build some teacher housing. Teacher housing is not in the Measure H project list. So
okay, fair enough.
Yeah, that would be the kind of scenario where you'd say, okay, you got to figure out another way to pay for those program management expenses.
Okay. And then my third summary point is there's nothing to preclude the committee from making a recommendation or making a specific comment in this annual report, this vintage's annual report relative to all of the discussions we just had here. If the committee concludes that it's best practices to do something different than what the district is currently doing relative to the allocation of management fees.
That's correct. And acknowledging that Skip disagrees on the legal conclusion, but there's nothing preventing the committee from making a recommendation if they want to see those non-bond funds allocated on some other basis than has been done to date.
Okay, more concisely said. Okay, any other comments on this topic, folks? Richard, you are not allowed to open up a discussion on teacher housing.
I was thinking of a condo for Mike. That's in Hawaii.
Okay, never mind. You just didn't say that. All right, with that, let's move on to item 6B. All right. And I think this, there was a flurry of emails this week, but Mr. Pearson, this might touch on timing of audit and things like that. Why don't we talk about that?
As far as the audit, Kevin?
Well, we were originally planning to present to the we had originally tentatively, how's that for two adverbs right after each other? Originally, comma, we had tentatively planned to present the annual report at the March 17th meeting. That was predicated on receiving the third-party audit and reviewing that with the auditors at this meeting. So
Right. Yeah, we don't think as I shared with you in an email, Rob and staff in his office have made it clear we need to get the audit as soon as possible. We don't have it at this point. Kelly and I spoke earlier, late yesterday, with the idea that if that's a target of the group to still try to make the March 17th, we would propose having a CBC meeting prior to the board meeting, so that we could get that on the board meeting. But we can tell you what date that is. Otherwise, we could push it out. I just don't know what board meeting it would be pushed out to at this point. I'd have to speak to the superintendent and determine what's the best one, because we are committed this time to hopefully not having you do it on a different day than the board meeting actually happens and at a reasonable time frame.
Appreciate that. You know, I don't know. Yeah, we'll just leave it at that. I appreciate that. I won't make any jokes. I'll just jinx myself. So I would say that let's say it this way, right? The committee, speaking on behalf of the committee, right? We would hope that at our regularly scheduled March meeting, that the third-party audit would be available for review and for presentation and review with the third-party auditor. I don't know how that works.
Yeah, to clarify, I think the other option was Mike was saying that you could potentially decide to take your March 9th meeting, slide it to March 2nd. And then you would be able to make the agenda for the board meeting on the 17th. The problem is with your meeting on the 9th is that the agenda items are due on the 9th for the March 17th board meeting. So
Right.
we wouldn't be able to meet, approve, and then agendize. But if you as a committee wanted to get this off the dime, you could say we'd like to change our March 9th meeting to March 2nd. We're picking March 2nd because it's the next Wednesday up. And that would leave you time to vote on your report, see the audit, and then give staff time to get it on the agenda for the 17th.
Okay. Appreciate it.
Why is there no third-party audit this time, Mike? I didn't hear it.
There will be an audit done, Richard. It's just the state has allowed themselves to extend it out, the third party to be able to extend it out. And we made it clear to them, we do not want them to extend it out because of COVID. So we're asking them to get it done for us by the date which they are legally responsible to get it to us by is January 31st.
Oh, okay.
Well, we were hoping to get it earlier for the
Yeah.
purposes of doing our annual
Oh.
report earlier.
Yeah, but shouldn't we at least see the audit before we decide? What if we have questions that can't be answered in?
Well, that's what we're proposing, Richard.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think, okay, so I wasn't aware that they have to submit it by January 31st. So I think what we're saying is that, what I'm hearing is that the audit will be made available to the committee and will be presented to the committee by the third-party auditor sometime after January 31st.
Well, yeah, we won't be before then because we don't have a bond oversight committee meeting before then because we don't have it today.
Right. So I personally am fine with keeping the March 9th meeting date and pushing the presentation to whatever a future date.
Okay.
And that also allows flexibility for contingency planning, but don't want to speak for everybody here if folks have different.
Is the meeting March 9th or I thought the meeting was a week later?
Your next meeting as a CBOC is March 9th. The target date for presenting your annual report with the audit was March 17th, which is a board meeting. So we're talking about two different meetings competing with one another.
Okay.
Okay.
Kevin,
Yes.
so if we were to push into April, and Kelly, I think this is probably a typo, but it must be, is it April 21st? It would be April 21st, not April 17th. April 21st, 2022.
I'm double checking the board schedule right now. I'm pulling it up on my other screen.
Yeah,
Hold on one
that's
second.
correct, Barb. There's a board meeting on the 7th, but it's a non-business meeting.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
The next one is the 21st.
Right, okay.
Sorry about that, Barb.
That's okay. So if we weren't able to, if we met, so the options we have are to move the meeting, the March 9th meeting to March 2nd, to be able to review the audit and approve the report in order to get it on the board agenda for the 17th, because those things have to be in 2 weeks before the board agenda. Okay. And the other option would be to keep the March 9th meeting to review the report and to review the audit, approve the report, approve the audit. But we missed the March 17th window, so that would push the board presentation to April 21st. Aren't those the two options?
Well, and it may not be, yes, Barb, you're correct. It just may not be April 21st. It may be in May. So I have to speak to the superintendent
Oh, okay.
topics that are coming up because we try to limit our presentations each night so we're not spilling into the next day.
Right, I understand that. I just want to, because I know that there is a 2-week window for things to have to go on the board agenda. Has to take, you
Yeah,
have to submit it.
correct.
You don't just like put it, okay, I just went, yeah, all right. So I think we need more time.
Yep. I also think we need to allow ourselves some time because it does take, and Kelly would agree with this, it takes a little bit of time after the CBOC meeting to put the final polishing touches on the package before it gets uploaded to the website and presented to the board. And we need to allow time for that so we're not running around with our hair on fire. Okay, so hearing no opinions otherwise,
Yeah.
we're gonna stay the course with the March 9th meeting as is.
Does the board actually get this report before their meeting actually starts?
Yes.
Yes,
It's in their hands that they can read it.
Yep.
Yes.
I mean, it's gonna be long, so that's why I'm
right,
asking.
there's 2 weeks.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so we have 33 minutes left, folks. So we did run through the report last time. Some folks have submitted some minor comments in follow-up to that. Based on the discussions from last meeting, which we'll work to address and incorporate into a draft that will be available at the March 9th meeting. So let me come full circle. So at the March 9th meeting, the goal would be to review the third-party audit and sign off on the annual report.
I have a question, Kevin. I read the report. I didn't read it. It's 102 pages long so far. Is that correct?
If I'm not mistaken, it's 39 pages. There are appendices, but there are things like meeting minutes and the bond language and things like that. The report itself, the document, I believe is 39 pages. I'll pull it up.
Yeah, maybe
Maybe I'm
with-
reading the wrong one, but I mean,
without going down a rabbit hole, Kelly, maybe you can pull up the table of contents.
Yeah, I
Just-
got it right here. 1 second.
So Richard, it's a roughly, I was gonna say it's roughly 30, the report itself is roughly 30 pages, plus or minus.
Yeah, so here's the report
what's the
here.
what's the 102 page thing I read? Is that an appendices? Is that what those
Yeah.
are?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's a long report, so I'm saying.
yeah,
Yes,
that's,
Go ahead, Kevin. I'm sorry.
no, scroll back up, please. I mean, or unless we have a separate list of appendices, here we.
Oh, yeah, you want to look here? Mhm.
So yeah, here we go. So it is a long report, Richard, not disagreeing with any of that. The meat of it is really sections 1 through 4, and of that, it's really section 4.
Mhm.
And really and truly, it's there are statements that accompany the report that are stipulated in the state constitution that governs the CBOCs. But it's really just sections 4.2 and 4.3 that are the meat of the report. So, and then there's all the appendices, which are standard, have been consistent in all the annual reports that we've generated for the most part. The project sheets, the project data sheets, as I call them, have evolved over time, and we are now including key analytics generated financial reports, and not the project metric spreadsheet or whatever we called it from that was in the initial annual report before key analytics was engaged.
Yeah, and
Okay.
generally speaking, the attachments mirror the attachments that you had in your report that you voted on and approved last time, just with updated information. Same with the content of this report. So just so everybody's up to speed, the content of the report that's in your folder for this meeting is updated content. So last meeting, we reviewed last year's report and talked about it. Now what's in the report that's in your folder this meeting is updated content. To the best of my ability, you can see things like, obviously the audit hasn't come in, so that's part. What you're seeing on your screen now is my live document, which has my notes on it. What I had to put on your live folder on the website is a PDF, obviously, because I can have the public clicking around in the live doc. But that's what we would use to update further between now and the next meeting, and then you would vote on it. I know Skip had sent us some comments, which we'll be incorporating, and then anybody else that wants to take the time to review it and send me any information ahead of time, I welcome that.
Okay, thanks for that clarification, Kelly. Just briefly, and then we're gonna jump ahead. If anyone has any comments to the report, I'll come back to specific comments in a minute, but please do send them prior to the March 9th meeting, and that would also include Kelly, maybe you can just run through very quickly the pie charts. Don't want to get into a discussion here, but part of the intent of this report, aside from putting people to sleep, is to provide high-level information that the public can digest. So
Yeah.
if anyone has any desires on additional data or changing the way it's presented, please do comment on that.
Also, just put it on your radar that I tried to go through, and if I made a change from last year in language, I highlighted it yellow just so the committee could see that up front. So for instance, I added a little language about, last year's report said half the year we were in a pandemic, and now this one says the whole year we were in a pandemic. Fun for all of us. So little changes like that. There was an updated regulation about a remote meeting. I added a link. So just really kind of anecdotal items. I also added a comment here about the need for additional CBOC members. As we've discussed in the past, many of you are terming out in November. So we're actively trying to find more members. I thought it might be valuable to add that to the report. If anybody feels differently, certainly let me know, but I did highlight it so that everybody could see that and know that it was a change. And then again, like I said, you're seeing my notes where I have to remind myself to match the table of contents and all that kind of fun stuff. So not a whole lot of changes because a lot of this language is boilerplate. As Kevin mentioned, the heart of it really comes when we talk about the pie charts. A lot of this further clarification we made in the last round of updating this report. So we have a lot of definitions and things like that that help you navigate the charts. All right. So again, this is chart 1 is just the breakdown. This is actually the breakdown of the implementation plan. So how much money is funded from each of the funding source that we just actually talked about.
Okay.
And then this is how it breaks down by encumbered funds for the given fiscal year that we were covering. And this is how it breaks down by bucket in the implementation plan. If you remember, there's those subtotals of the different types of projects. And this one is the site, it's breaking down just the seismic by site type. And just a reminder from last year's report, we made the decision. So if it's elementary and the color is blue on the chart, every other time we talk about an elementary school in the chart, it's blue, just so that people can kind of track it a little easier. So same with the emergency projects, which are a pretty small part of the bond, but still, that's the breakdown. Modernization and new construction. Fencing and site safety. This is technology, as you may have remembered from last time we talked about it. We break down technology not by site, by type of technology, because it would be way too confusing to break it down by site, because pretty much everything happens at multiple campuses. So this is a better way to show the public how the money is being spent. Oops, let me fix a little formatting error while I'm at it. This breaks down the capital improvement management category. And this breaks down the hard versus soft costs. So the hard costs are construction dollars, soft cost is basically everybody else. And then we go into specific comments.
Okay, perfect transition there. So
Yep.
For the March 9th meeting, please come prepared and submit prior to the meeting, rather, any specific comments that any of you would like to make. We will also be working on how to succinctly and summarily summarize, I'm sorry, that was redundant, the specific comments from previous years and how we view them currently. And then finally, just an idea to throw out there, which we can talk about in additional detail at the March 9th meeting, would be, and I'm not sure if we talked about this last meeting or this was email correspondence completely compliant with the Brown Act. Thank you, Counselor. Relative to this committee, right? One of the things that we should be proud of and that the Board of Trustees should appreciate is that the reason that we are now seeking additional members is because most of us have been involved in Measure H since its beginning, and many of us have experience with other measures, bond measures. So there's a wealth of experience here, and there could be a top 10 list of lessons learned or suggestions or recommendations to the board for things to consider to make the next bond measure, to not spend time talking about things next time, to make sure they're incorporated in the bond measure. So we will talk about that next time as well. Okay. Any questions on the homework assignments relative to the annual report for the next meeting? Anyone?
Kevin, your top 10 list, as you just mentioned, you would put that in this annual report as well?
The concept is it could be an attachment, but yeah. So and obviously this would have to be wordsmithed, right? But you know, one of our if we go back to our initial annual report and the grand jury findings, right? One of the issues was the specificity or lack thereof of projects identified in the Measure H language versus the, I'm going to call it the master plan. It was called something different at the time, Kelly, which I'm not remembering, but that was one example, right? That identify specific projects or have the scope of the implementation plan against which the bond is measured or referenced be commensurate with the funding that's requested in the measure, in the bond fund, in the bond that people are voting on, right? So just an idea. We don't have to take that on, but just an idea. Some way to capture all the discussions we've had and encourage them to be incorporated in a bond next time.
Yes.
Just when you prepare with these documents, just a reminder that the current versions of all the documents are in your folder for this week's meeting, including attachments that were ready at the time of the meeting. Obviously, like we said, we've talked about the audit, but if it was ready, it's in your folder, so you have the documents you need to review. I will welcome comments.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that. Okay. Ms. Paulson has been waiting patiently for us, so let's move on to item 6E, high-level summary of the financials, please.
Good evening. Kelly, you've got it up. There you go.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think we're skipping around. I don't know if the slides are different than the agenda or if
I'm sorry. No, I messed up here. Let's
okay. I was flipping around frantically.
no, I messed up here. So okay. So where are we right now? Section. Okay, let's cover this. This was a specific question last
Sorry,
time.
Patty.
That's okay.
Sorry, my bad. Okay. All right, back to you, Kelly.
That's okay. I'm going to try to do this lightning round style as well as the project update because we have 20 minutes left and I know we have a hard stop at 6. Richard had asked about how the money for American Canyon Middle School was reallocated in the implementation plan. And we did kind of hint at the fact that it was a little complicated because it basically the money went back into the pot and then got reallocated in a different way to different projects. But we just wanted to give a brief summary to the committee of the process that took. So the second American Canyon Middle School was canceled in September 12th of 2019. There was updated implementation plans that reallocated that money to a new, we'll call it a multi-purpose room for the sake of what it's used for, but we're calling it a student commons because it does much more than a multi-purpose room. And that would be built on the existing American Canyon campus. And then in addition to that, we flagged projects that would be part of a campus mod district-wide initiative to start updating roofing and HVAC systems at multiple sites. The projects that have been completed to date under that district-wide umbrella are Northwood, Bel Air, Alta Heights, Donaldson Way, NVLA, Vintage High's gym, Napa High's gym, and Silverado Middle School's gym. And as we've discussed in the past, these projects were funded from some of the money from the American Canyon Middle School reallocation and some from state matching funds. If we had not received state matching funds, we wouldn't never have been able to do as much campus modernization as we've been able to do. Board approval of implementation plans that reworked this money were February of 2020 and then an update in December of 2020. So that's your just super fast rundown of how that money got broken out.
Thank you.
All right. We also wanted to take an opportunity to update you on the implementation plan that we're working on. As you guys know, about every 10 to 12 months, we like to take an updated implementation plan to the board, let them know how all the money is shaking out and any additional funds that we receive. So the updated implementation plan will be shared with the board subcommittee on January 25th. We are flagging the February 10th meeting for the board to take that. And then we will present to you folks at your March 9th meeting that document. The updates are not earth-shattering, no additional projects or anything super exciting, but we will go over it with you so you have an understanding of the updated plan. Again, going super fast, but if you have questions, let me know. If not, we'll move to the next item.
I think we're good. Let's move to, okay.
Now we're here.
Ms. Paulson, you're on.
All right. So this is, you're familiar with this report format. This takes us to the end of December. Kelly, you want to drive?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry about that.
I can
And
share my
also, I don't
screen.
know how many of you got the opportunity, but the report was also in your folder for the meeting. So hold on one second and I'll grab it up, Patty.
Otherwise, I've got mine up.
Oh, that's okay. Hold on one second. And I will get there. There we go. All set.
All right.
This is 122 pages.
Yeah, we're not going to go over it all. So go ahead and slide down, Kelly, to page 2 is just a recap summary of the bond, the 269 million. Page 3 just shows kind of where we are with the interest income. You go a little too fast, Kelly.
Oh, sorry. Oh, there you go. Sorry about that.
Okay, so total project funds, we almost have about 275 million. And then Kelly, I think this is, unless I have a wrong date, is this 12/31/2020?
You're muted, Kelly.
Yeah, this is the wrong one, Kel. Let me
Sorry.
share my
Wow,
screen.
I'm a disaster. Here, why don't I stop sharing and you share?
Okay,
There you
we
go. That's what I get for trying to go fast.
That's okay. All righty. So you should be able to see, whoops, let me go back. All right. So we are just showing you here is the summary of the bond, the 269 million. So we've got roughly 274 point almost 3 million. Project expenditures as of 12/31 is almost 247 million. The additional encumbrances, which are the POs and the contracts the district has entered into that have not been paid out yet, 5.5 million. Total commitments, 262 million. Budget remaining for the current projects, 11.4 million. So the subtotal for our current projects is 273.6 million, leaving about 651,000 remaining. So that just ties back to our total funds available. And then the next section we have is we give you a project grouping that ties back to the implementation plan. So in the categories where seismic, emergency, growth, seismic safety, technology, capital improvement management, we break it down by what was budgeted, the encumbrances, what's been dispersed, which are the payments, actually checks cut out the door, budget remaining, and the encumbered balance. And so we give it to you, then we take this next section, and I did a graph here just to show a pie chart, kind of those various categories, with the biggest component being the growth, modernization, and construction. And then the next section, I give you a breakdown by each of those major categories, but I give it to you by site. For instance, this is seismic. So under seismic, we have the various school sites, and there was the 91.9 million for seismic, and the same layout going across horizontally with the budgets, encumbrances, expenditures, encumbered balance, remaining budget for each of these reports. So that's seismic. Here is the emergency, so almost 2.6 million. Growth and modernization is the biggest chunk, that's 125 million. School site safety, 3.8 million. Technology is the 27.9 million. And then capital improvement management, 22 million. And then we kind of just give you an overall breakdown of all the same information, but we just give you a total by each site. So what has been cumulatively spent across all projects for Measure H by campus. And that's 273.6 million total there. The next section, we take that same 269 million, is we break it down what we call project type. And the district uses a management code field. So each of these management code correspond to what project type. So there's the 273.6 million again, broken out by project type. Then we include even more detail if you want to see each site, and under each site, those various projects broken out by each of those projects under each campus. So just slicing and dicing the same data various ways so you can see it at summarized levels and at varying detailed levels. So there's the 273.6 million. And then the rest of the report primarily is this expenditure summary, which gives you for each and every project you're going to get a summary of, like under here, planning and construction costs, the subcategories of what was actually included under the varying subcategories. So you'll see a project number, and that corresponds back to that detailed list. And you can see, so this, I'm not going to go through this. The rest of the report, there is the old implementation plan, which Kelly indicated. This is the old one from 12/10 of 2020, and that they're in process of preparing a new one. So an updated implementation plan. So that was a lightning round. Is there
That's great.
anything you want me to go back on, or you've got the information? If you
Is that $273 million you keep talking about?
yeah.
Does that include that fund from 40 schedule 4?
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't.
It is only Fund 21's balance. So it's
That's
the
what I thought.
cost of the bond plus the interest that it bore during its life. But it does not count. So when you go to the updated implementation plan that we've been talking about,
Yeah.
that totals a different number, a higher number, because it counts all the funds.
Right.
Yes. So you two sets of books?
No, we're actually tracking all the same dollars that Kelly's tracking in the implementation plan. We're tracking, but we only showed the bond oversight committee, the responsibility is on the measure H. So this report is dealing specifically with measure H. We include the implementation plan at the back, so you can see how the district has leveraged other dollars. But the report itself is specific to measure H.
That goes back to the conversation we were having with Carlos earlier, which is that we welcome you guys to ask us questions, and we'll provide information on the projects. We give you, totals of how it's getting allocated, but the detailed reporting and your purview to report to the board for your annual report are based upon the Fund 21 funds and Measure H.
So, but in other words, just looking at something here, if we get scheduled for number 40 funds along with it, that's not actually the price. Then the number that they give me is $645,000 is not actually the price. It could be greater. Is that correct?
That would depend on the project and the item.
Right. I mean, but like when the gym's roof at Silverado has a price to it, but if in fact we got matching funds from the state, in fact, actually costs more than the $3 million. It actually costs $4 million. So it is two sets of books.
Yeah, well, it's not two sets of books. I guess I don't like that term because it makes it sound like it feels pointed. But no, we keep one set of books with Patty's system with all of the information. We are obligated to show the bond oversight committee the bond, and so that's what we show you, but we want you to understand that context, which is why we give you the implementation plan along with this.
I'm fine with that, but it doesn't actually show the actual price, what I'm saying.
As I said, depending upon the project, as you can imagine, there is $273 million worth of bond funds, and there's like $40 million in Fund 40 or something. I don't quote me on that. I don't know how much it is, but it's a very small amount.
But Kelly, if you want to try to estimate what the next project is going to cost, you really need the full figure, not this figure. You need the full figure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
And Kelly has all of that in our system. And keep in mind, we're not keeping a separate set of books. We actually load out of the district's fiscal system. The limitation the district's fiscal system has is they can only do single year reporting, and their system is not designed to be able to meet kind of the needs of large facility type programs.
Yeah, I understand.
Same number, same information. We reconcile the district's books. All the stuff Kelly's working with in the implementation is in our system. But for the purposes of the bond oversight report, we limit that to Measure H.
All right.
Sorry, I'm going to do a time check because we've got 5 minutes, 6
Yep.
minutes. Sorry.
So let me just recap very quickly here, or attempt to recap very quickly. So the key analytics report that we have in front of us is filtered for Fund 21 only.
Mhm.
However, it does cover all the funds, the Fund 21 Measure H fund, as well as Fund 40 and all the various funds related to the capital program that's currently underway, correct? And
Correct.
based on, and Richard, to your point, if we as a committee wanted to opine on the economic efficiency of the utilization of Measure H funds, to understand the true construction costs of a project that was funded by Fund 21 and Fund 40, we would need to add those two numbers together. And then finally, to our summary before, Carlos, there's nothing to preclude us from looking at a key analytics report. Don't know what the format would be. That does include Fund 40 budgets and costs and encumbrances, if the committee were to deem that necessary to inform our oversight on Measure H. Okay, Carlos.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize I think that's all right. I don't know what the logistics are of producing a report that goes beyond the bond funds, but I think if you wanted, just ask yourself how helpful that would be, but
Yeah, that's a reasonable consideration. Okay,
Okay, Kevin.
And I would just say all this same funding, all of those reports are all available in our system.
Yep.
We just report what's applicable to Measure H, and then we do include the implementation plan at the back of this report, which shows the varying funds.
Kevin.
Yes, we have 4 minutes. Thanks, Barb.
Yes, I just wanted to make a recommendation that, and I don't know if I need a motion or not, I think we do, to push the item 8, item 9, and item 10 on our current agenda to the beginning of our March 9th agenda, so that we can finish this meeting at 6 o'clock. Modify, I
Yeah.
don't know, I think we got to modify the agenda, and I think we need a motion to do that.
Real quick, Patty, can you stop screen sharing so I can go back to the slides? Thanks.
Okay.
Sure.
I don't know that we need a motion, but I'm happy to have a motion.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're
We're
respectful.
in compliance. Yep. So everybody good with wrapping up with number 7 and moving the rest to the next meeting on March 9th?
Yes.
Thanks, Jill. Okay. Okay, can we do a lightning round on number 7, please?
No, I think we need to move 7 also.
You want to move 7 also? I didn't hear that in your,
Yeah, I said 7, 8, 9, and 10.
okay. All right. Then we will move 7, 8, 9. We don't have any new business. And 10 is just a reminder of the next meeting. So we will move 7 and 8 to the agenda for next time.
Yeah. I mean,
And many
Okay.
of the items on these slides and the documents are just links that remind you where to find information. So you can still use the links even if we defer the item.
Yeah, so we will make sure we cover the project updates that we were going to cover this time, next time.
Yeah.
So that's the item number 7 is really the one that got cut.
Yeah.
8, 9, and 10 are generally templated information. Okay. With that, we want to thank
spare.
one more time, Carlos.
1 minute to spare.
That's right. Thank you all. Thanks everybody for your attendance.
Nice.
And be safe out there, and we'll catch you all on Wednesday, the 9th of March at 4:30.
All right. Good job. Good job, Kelly.
Thank you. Bye-bye, guys.
Okay, bye.
Bye.